Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Peace and Plenty in 20. I'm your host, Janine Deramo, midlife transformational coach, and every week I am breaking down all the things about midlife, woman to woman, friend to friend, 20 minutes that you could take a walk, do the dishes, drive the carpool, and get a little bit of time to reflect and do just take some special time for you. So last week, if you joined me for episode 27, I took you back to where my personal diet, weight, body issues all began at 10 years old, the back of my Hello Kitty journal, secretly writing down the number on the scale that, without me knowing at the time, would shape decades of my life. So that was the beginning, but today we're jumping into the next chapters, my 20s through my 40s, when I was chasing that perfect body through every program, plan, and promise that you could imagine. Between Weight Watchers meetings and low-carb fads and intense workouts and just all the rules that I thought were the answers to finally fix me. Right? Have you ever felt that? If I could just lose X number of pounds, everything would fall into place. If I could just get to that number on the scale, that's the solution. Everything is going to be perfect after that. And that was the soundtrack of my 20s, my 30s, my 40s. And every time I thought this will be the last one, this is it. This is when I'm going to finally figure it out, stick to it, obtain what I want for my weight and my body, and then everything's going to just fall into place. So today I want to take you inside those decades of dieting and talk about what it did for me, more importantly, what it took from me, and how I finally found something that actually felt like peace. So let's go back actually to my first Weight Watchers meeting, which was in my early 20s. I remember I had just started teaching, graduated college, and a girlfriend of mine had successfully lost a lot of weight. And so a few of us went with her. Mind you, to be honest, at that point, in hindsight, I really didn't have a lot of weight to lose, but sure, I probably could have, lost 10 or 15 pounds just coming out of college, kind of, just wanting to feel healthy and kind of have a structure. And that's what Weight Watchers really provided for me and does provide for a lot of people, is that structure. It's a set of points, a set of rules, a clear path to follow, right? So it's like this lifeline, because I've got a plan. I can eat all the things I want to. I can still have fun, but I'm going to lose weight. And it worked. And it worked until it didn't. Because what happens is, right alongside that hope and excitement, as humans, we can only maintain restriction for so long. And even though Weight Watchers, I will say, compared to some of the other diets out there, did allow for a lot of flexibility, did allow and really evolved over the years to try to incorporate nutrition ideals like drinking your water and eating more protein, lower points for protein. So while it did address some of those things, there was still always going to be some sense of restriction. Always going to be that pressure to stay on plan, right? And to maintain your lifetime status. And I get why they do that. It's accountability, and we all need accountability. And listen, again, it worked, because when you do see the scale moving, you're like, wow, this is working. I'm not wasting my membership. But then it becomes, you have a bad week, you have a bad month, you slip and you go off the diet. And then what happens? you kind of just eat whatever the hell you want, because now you really don't have to count the points, which was exhausting, until you get to the point where you know them by heart, which to this day, you could show me a piece of food, not anything, most things, I could probably tell you how many points it was based on the last time I was there, 10 or maybe 10 years ago. So those weigh-ins become a little more than check-ins. It almost feels like a judgment day. And that feeling of shame is never going to be a positive driver for the kinds of permanent change we want to make in our lives. And I really can look back now and notice how that line between commitment or like dedication and obsession can get very blurry. And this is true for any type of diet. I'm just sharing with you my experience with Weight Watchers because that's what I did for so many years, for all of my 20s and my early 30s too. I had Ava when I was 29. I went after she was born. I went again after Caitlin. I went again after Ella, who is now 15. So again, I'm going to say that was like 10 years ago. Was the last time I was there. But again, I do see why it worked for a while, because I had those rules, I had those structures, because I never felt in control of my own body. I never trusted my own body. Going way back to what I just shared last week about, that number is important because the gym teacher put me on the scale, or measuring the fat on my arm, or just hearing people talk about weight, that noise, right? And with Weight Watchers, I could lose the weight and still, quote unquote, like beat the system and be successful. But they weren't nutritionally sound habits for the long term, or for the longevity that I want now, or for real health outcomes. I mean, they tried to instill that. Like I said, they really evolved over the years, Weight Watchers. But the bottom line was always the number on the scale. So doing that off and on, I mean, I'd go back, and then what I would do sometimes to talk about the shame that's involved, I would find a different meeting in a different town, because I wouldn't want those leaders to see me. Just all the tricks, right? I would weigh in, like I would try to do, I did all different types of things. For a while, I just did Fridays because I knew I would then be able to use all my points on Friday and Saturday over the weekend. The extra points, I forget, who knows what they were called. I don't even remember now. And then I could reel it in again. It was like a game. And again, it worked in terms of getting the number down, but that was it. And I did that for a long time. And then I also, in between, tried lots of other things. And then even after coming off of Weight Watchers 10 years ago, I tried other things. I did keto for a while. I did the HCG diet. I did Beachbody. I tried Jenny Craig with a friend for a while. I did Tim Ferriss's The 4-Hour Body. I did almost everything. And the last diet that I did was in, I'm going to say 2021. It was called All-In. Teddy Mellencamp, who many of you know, and who I actually really like, has a program. It was super restrictive. I actually had to travel during it, and I had to pack a scale so I could take pictures and send the accountability. And that was the last diet I ever did, because, and it's interesting that it was the most restrictive, and I just really thought, like, this is it. This is my last shot. And I felt like I related to Teddy a lot, and just had similar, like, I love the same kind of Peloton walks and workouts she does. But the fact of the matter is that diet cycle and that emotional cycle was something I had to break up with. That emotional cycle, if you can relate to this, you get super excited about a new plan. This is going to be it. Oh my gosh, my friend did this. Look at these. Oh, I can do this. I can do this. You kill it, right? a month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever it is. You obsess about it, you do it right, you have the willpower, and you get there to whatever that goal is. And I did this with a trainer too, even like physically with my body. And then you burn out because it's not sustainable for real life or for long term. And then you feel shame. And then you do Last Supper eating, is what we call it in the intuitive eating community, where Sunday night, I'm just going to binge, eat whatever I want because of that shame. And then Monday morning, I'm going to try the next new diet, or I'm going to go back to Weight Watchers, but to a different meeting this time. I was done. And the fact of the matter is, and this is research-based, diets do not work long-term. What they actually do is harm your relationship with food, with your body, and your self-trust. When you are on a diet, you are completely disconnected from your body's internal signals. Am I hungry? Am I actually hungry? Am I actually full? Am I actually satisfied? When you're counting points or counting calories, or you have a list of like, I can't eat that, but I can eat this, there's no paying attention to what your body's telling you. So you're disconnected from that. And then over time, which is what happened to me, I had no idea how to even listen to my body. And that restriction, what happens is it creates this primal hunger, because you have both physical deprivation and you have the psychological deprivation. And then that's why that overeating or that binging happens when you fall off the diet or you break the rules. And it's literally not about your lack of willpower. You feel like, you feel like I suck. I knew I couldn't do this. I could keep up with anything. It's not that. It's literally a physiological reaction that your body is rebelling against the restriction. And I just also was so tired of being either good or bad, on or off plan. My food shopping was dictated by what kind of diet I was on, instead of just buying nutritional, healthy foods for all of us. And diets don't take into account your personal health history, your metabolism, your health conditions, your preferences. We don't all love cottage cheese, your lifestyle. And that's another reason why a diet is unsustainable. And it just drives home the fact, this false story that you failed the diet. And that's not true. The diet failed you. And that's not a cop-out. That's not an excuse. I've spent hours and hours and hours and a lot of training with this, and that's just a hill that I will die on. And the fact of the matter is, and you know this if you've been a yo-yo dieter, most people will regain the weight that they've lost on a diet. And again, that up and down wreaks havoc on your body, on your metabolism. And not only are those negative physical effects, but there's a lot of mental effects too. Your confidence is low. You feel like you don't know what decisions to make anymore. And that's where I was at when I came upon intuitive eating. The last thing I want to mention, though, just coming back to that point about the diets being the failure, not you. There is a reason, and I looked up, because I always like to know the latest facts, the latest research. There is a reason that the non-medical weight loss revenue right now, so I'm not talking about any medical interventions, I'm talking about weight loss programs, products, services. Let me look it up. In 2024, it was around 38.4 billion. In order for them to pull in that kind of money, they are counting on us to not trust ourselves, to not value our own bodies and knowledge and wisdom, but rather they know you need to find a fix, right? So I don't honestly remember how I discovered the concept of intuitive eating. I do remember one of the first people I started following is Find Food Freedom on Instagram. And she really had some great content. And then you know how your algorithm goes. So I started watching some other stuff, and I was really intrigued by the concept because I am someone who is very driven by authenticity and truth and listening to yourself over outside forces. So I started to I started to research, I should say, what is this intuitive eating? What is this concept? Because most people have a very, and not to anyone's fault, just because it sounds like you're just eating whatever you want. Most people have this misconception of what it actually is. So a lot of people think it means you just eat whatever you want, whenever you want. You don't think about your health. You just kind of eat all the burgers, eat all the fries, eat all the pizza. And that is absolutely not what it is. So I did a lot of research around this before I decided to actually, I was already a certified coach at that point, but I wanted to take it to the next step and get certified as an intuitive eating counselor. And I got to study right under the founders. And that process was so enlightening. There were a lot of emotions. Let me back up. The first emotion was relief. I felt like I could exhale. I felt like after decades of counting, tracking, weighing, labeling, I just had this freedom that I'm like, you don't have to do that anymore. But then the next part was fear. I can't be trusted without any kind of rules or structure. Like, I'll just eat pizza all the time. I'll just eat chocolate all the time. And that could happen at first. I don't think I ever really did that. But I will say that that is a possibility at first. But if you're really learning and you have someone guiding you through, like I did, the principles and understanding intuitive eating, the curiosity and the knowledge really was more exciting to me. And I think I used the word lightning before, to like put it into practice and try another way of being. And it was the first time I did all these cool like experiments, like, where am I on the hunger scale? Like, am I hungry? Am I physically hungry, or am I just emotionally hungry? Am I stressed? Am I sad? And I hadn't paid attention to that stuff in years. And then the other thing I realized is that some of those foods that were like bad or cheat, like foods I'd put on a pedestal, weren't even that exciting when I knew that I had the freedom to just have them anytime. Listen, there was a lot of discomfort along the way too, like guilt over eating, too much bread. And also there is this tendency for many people to fall into that perfectionist persona and make sure that I'm doing it right. But then what I really started to focus on was just the slowing down, right? Just the paying attention to my body, paying attention to what foods, like made me feel tired after I ate them, what foods gave me energy, like I never paid attention to that stuff. That was not even on my radar because I just had to count and track. And so there were a lot of wins that came from that. Just not stressing about going to a restaurant, not looking ahead of time and having to know what I was going to be allowed to eat that weekend, what day I was going to drink. That went away. And I also found like all of this new mental space, like it cleared up so much space in my head. And I think if you're someone that's struggled or someone that's always been kind of using a lot of mental energy around worrying about food and weight and body, I want to just share with you that it is possible to rebuild trust with your body. It is possible, regardless of if you're doing any kind of weight loss plan or program, or I think the most important thing to think about is what you want to put in your body that makes you feel good, how food makes you feel, why are you eating the food. There is so much learning that came from this experience and those principles for me that really have changed my relationship with food and my body, and really made me respect it and accept it and look at it for all the wonderful things it's done for me and for what it's provided and given me my children and all those. I mean, I did 2 years of work around this and writing, letters apologizing to my body for the things I had done. And once I was feeling, emotionally so much better around food and just feeling, listen, did I feel great about myself all the time? No. There were definitely times I saw pictures, but I really, really switched the narrative and did not beat myself up about it. And I had to also embrace the fact that this is not like a quick fix, another diet. This was a long-term process of me unlearning rules and restrictions and just finding a way to eat balanced and to eat gently that would support the well-being that I want and the longevity that I want. And again, it was just so freeing. I'd made peace for the most part with my reflection. Sure, it is human to always, especially for us women, to always want to look better. There is nothing wrong with wanting to look good. I just want to be clear on that. There's also nothing wrong if you are a person, by the way, who diets. There is nothing wrong with that. I was a dieter forever. What I want to focus on here is trusting yourself. Like, what is it that you want for yourself? What is it that would feel good? And then you get to kind of start to make those decisions. So let's back up again. So yes, I'm feeling at peace. I don't have the food rules. I'm really worked through these principles of intuitive eating. But unfortunately, what happened was, because I was also paying attention now to my body, it started telling me that some things were a little off. And my doctor's appointments were telling me that some things, my health things, were off, and things I really couldn't ignore. So next week, come back and join me, because I'm going to be sharing exactly what happened next and the decision that I had to make that has shifted my relationship with health and weight. And I want to keep you up to date on where I am now with all that. Before I let you go, I'm going to give you an action step. I just want you to journal. Pull out your journal. If you don't have one, pull out a piece of paper. But I highly recommend pen in hand is such a great opportunity to get some of the stuff that we carry around out of here, because we have enough to do, and just like into another space. If you don't love journaling, do a voice recording or just do a note on your phone if you're more techie. Or if you want to, you can just like kind of meditate on this and think about it. But here's what I want you to think about. What diets have you tried, if you have? What rules or beliefs from those diets still exist in your head today? Like, do you still look at, a Skinny Cow ice cream cone and say 4 points? And are there any of those rules, or are there any thoughts around food and body that you're ready to let go of, that you're ready to release. So take a few minutes this week, my friends. If this resonates with you, share it with a friend, because I don't think we talk about this enough. Sometimes we talk about it with our closest friends, but there's a lot of shame when we're talking about bodies and weight and image. There's so much, you have to be so careful also. There's so many emotions, and people definitely can be triggered by it. And I'm just kind of shining the light on my experience and my truth in the hopes that maybe it can help someone else. So if you think that's the case, please share it. Also, please subscribe on YouTube, on Spotify and Apple. Please download, share. That's how I get this show out there into the world. My little peace and plenty in 20. And I hope to see you back here next week to tell you the next part of my journey. And I will see you then. Peace.